the 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, equipped. We are the new improved Nigerians. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
It's okay, I'm okay.
What happened?
It's just a little scratch, Mom. How can I play with bigger boys if I'm afraid of little scratches, right?
What comforts a mother most is to see her child growing up.
Done, I'll go.
Of course. But I know that as he learns to be brave, he'll face even more germs and the risk of infection.
That's why you need Dettol protection, because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
You in the air-conditioned office with the itchy throat. Strepsils. Girl in the spotlight with the raspy throat. Strepsils. You in the pollution. Yes, you. Dry throat. Strepsils. Hello in the downpour with the scratchy throat. Take Strepsils. Strepsils, with its soothing medicinal ingredients, will heal the harm done to your throat from external factors. Strepsils. Strepsils. Strepsils, for a dry, itchy, raspy, scratchy throat. Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
The time has come again when we all gather at the Unity Forum to celebrate the uniqueness of our cultural diversity and showcase the beauty of our cultural creativity and ingenuity. It's the National Festival of Arts and Culture, NAFEST, in the Garden City of Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Come, let's celebrate our culture and heritage. Hold it 20th to 27th October 2018. Special features, dance drama, traditional wrestling, indigenous textiles and cuisine, arts and crafts exhibition, entrepreneurship roundtable, skills acquisition, and many more. 20th to 27th October 2018. Be a part of history. It's NAFEST Rivers 2018, the festival that unites the nation. Otumba Olusegun Runshewe, DG National Council.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
All right, you're welcome back. And if you've just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. Now, in the world of business, Riyadh's defense of its fiscal policy at the just concluded IMF World Bank meeting, but calls for effective implementation of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan to help the country overcome predictions of economic downturn. Now, let's get more details from our business news correspondent, Joy Uzo.
Welcome to Business News. Economists have commended the decision of the country to maintain a stable exchange rate to avoid depreciation of the naira. They were of the opinion that this will help check inflation, capital flies, and attract more foreign direct investments. This is against the backdrop of advice by both IMF and the World Bank that nations should formulate and implement country-specific policies and fiscal structural reforms that would boost economic growth. Development economist Ken Ife also spoke on the need to fast-track the implementation of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP.
Nigeria has an economic recovery and growth plan, which I consider a robust plan. But you still have to say, where are we on the plan? That's the question. Where are we? Yes, some breakdown of performance indicators were done. Some were allocated to some MDAs, some were captured in the budget. But where are we on spend, budget performance? Where are we on monitoring of these indicators? Why are we not publishing the monitoring report? And it hasn't been done. As far as I know, somebody said it's going to be done in December, when you are going into election. When? We need to know so that we can put pressure on the MDAs that are supposed to give us results.
In another development, West African countries have joined forces to interlink their payment systems to make trading between African countries easier. When effected, West African states would be closer to achieving their dream of migrating to a single currency known as the ECO. Ngozi Egbuna, Director General, West African Monetary Institute, says between 2012 and 2016, the African Development Bank funded the creation of payment systems in 6 African countries. The West African Monetary Zone, which is made up of 6 countries, the Gambia, Guinea, Ghana, Liberia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone, will be used to pilot the payment systems infrastructure. And stocks on the equities market halts 2-day gaining streak as the NSE All-Share Index dips by 0.13% to open the week negative. Next is a graphic representation of the closing figures. Thanks for watching. I am Joy Uzo.
All right, thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business package. Next for us now, we take a look at some of the stories in some of today's newspapers.
Atoyebi is back with us again this morning for another review, of course, and to give more depth into our review this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. Bayo, good morning.
Morning, Rhoda.
Welcome.
Good morning, Kingsley.
Good
morning,
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper, the front page of the Daily Trust. The lead story comes with a kicker. It says, bribery videos. Kano Assembly sets up investigative committee. That's the Daily Trust headline there. It says, bribery videos, Kano Assembly sets up investigative committee. And below the nameplate of the paper, you have 3 headlines there. 2019, INEC insists APC has no candidates in Zamfara. That's page 13. Boko Haram kills another health worker in Borno. That's page 3. And battle for power lines rages. That's page 3. And TCN Bika over fiber optics. That's on page 17 in greater detail. Now, you also have the photograph there on the front page of Daily Trust saying former employees of the defunct Nigeria Airways who were waiting to be screened in Lagos yesterday following the federal government's recent approval of 45 billion naira for their severance package. Details of the story can be found on page 6. Now, below that, 3 headlines. My role in Obasanjo and Atiku reconciliation. That's according to Bishop Kuka. page 42 in greater detail. And missing general, we know the culprits, and that's according to the military. Details can be found on page 8. How police officer killed female motorist in Abuja, details on page 3.
All right, so now let's quickly take a look at the Nigerian pilots. Most of the stories, the headlines, the lead stories are just almost the same. But then let's go into the paper. That's a Nigerian pilot on page 6 of a Nigerian pilot. It says Nigeria needs $1 trillion to develop energy infrastructure. That's on page 6. And if you go down, it says court validation of Executive Order 6 boost for anti-corruption war. Court's validation of Executive Order 6 boost for anti-corruption war. Now, if you turn to page 12 of the Nigerian pilot now, on page 12 of the Nigerian pilot, it says gully erosion. It's Akwa Ibom declares 11 communities disaster zones. Gully erosion. Akwa Ibom declares 11 communities disaster zones. And just below the foot of the paper, it says Buhari celebrates Alafin Ofoyo on his 80th birthday. It's the bottom left. It says Buhari celebrates Alafin Ofoyo on his 80th birthday. All right, Bayo, let's begin with the stories that we have now.
Yes, our house must go out to the family of Hawa Lema, who has been executed by Boko Haram. The federal government has expressed shock and have commiserated with the family. The Minister of Information described it as a dastardly, inhuman and ungodly act. The minister said government did all it can to stop them from shedding the blood of these innocent persons. They had negotiations and followed up through their government and other international organizations, religious leaders who were all pleading for these people to spare the life of the girl. So we are deeply pained by the killing, but we'll continue to monitor and ensure that all the innocent persons who are still remain in the custody of the abducted persons, the Boko Haram, are released. Hawa Lema is one of the 3 health workers that were abducted in March at Ran. Unfortunately, her colleague was also killed late September. She was killed after the expiration given by the Boko Haram faction described as Islamic State in West Africa province. The lady was a 24-year-old midwife and a student of Health Education University of Maiduguri. 4 soldiers, 4 policemen, and 3 other humanitarian workers were also killed when the Boko Haram invaded Ran and took them hostage. The other story that Kingsley read relates to a 7-man panel set up by the Kano State House of Assembly to inquire into the video that's been making round on the social media about alleged giving and taking of bribe. The Kano State government has threatened to go to court, but the Kano State Assembly has set up a 7-man panel headed by the leader of the majority leader in the House, and he has appealed that Kano State government should please withhold its court case to allow them to investigate into the matter. The House of Assembly gave the panel 1 month to inquire into the matter and report to the House. I'm talking about the 2 lawyers have gone to court to challenge the Executive Order number 6. They filed an appeal at the Federal Court of Appeal, Abuja Division, and they are seeking that the Federal High Court ruling that the Executive Order was itself not wrong, and however, the Attorney General of the Federation must obtain court order before he executed. No date has been filled for briefing on the appeal.
Kingsley, yesterday on the program you had one of your guests that you had yesterday, Garba Shehu, that's Special Senior Assistant to the President, spoke extensively on this Executive Order number 6 and how it intends to operate. But there's a view that people out there seem to be getting a wrong view of how it is supposed to operate.
Yeah, you see, every issue is like a coin. It will have 2 sides. Okay. And as it is generating controversy, lawyers have taken sides. Some say it is not justified. Others say it is justified. In fact, interestingly, the other day, the Chief Justice of Nigeria said, even cases that the Supreme Court has ruled upon, you still have lawyers who will come forward and try to take another angle to try and see if they can open up that same case again. So it is not far-fetched that people will, from their own perspective, they will try to see if they can have a second approach to that issue. But that is the beauty of democracy and the rule of law. If there is issue that is, has a legal base, challenge it to the court and test its veracity in the court process.
Well, I don't know. Bio, as Rhoda indicated, it was one of the topics we discussed on Good Morning Nigeria yesterday. In addition to Garbashir, we also had a legal practitioner who joined us in that conversation. The most important thing is for any interested party to first read the Executive Order number 6, and then also read the decision of the Federal High Court in Abuja last week. What is the gravamen of the decision? The decision says, look, Executive Order number 6 is valid.
And constitutional.
Yeah, and constitutional, that is within the constitutional powers. It's not a law-making executive order, but a restatement, a reaffirmation of a presidential directive to relevant agencies, and specifically also names the Attorney General of the Federation as the coordinator of matters arising therefrom. So, as you have said, the matter has gone on appeal. I don't know the substance of the appeal, but what exactly will the appellants be seeking to impugn and therefore seek to upturn the decision? It's a different issue altogether, the application of Executive Order number 6. Application, that's a different issue.
And the court was quite emphatic about the application, that even where some persons may have to be restrained, permission had to be sought through the courts.
Absolutely. And then, Bio, the other story, you talked about the Boko Haram, unfortunately, carrying out their threat to take the life of a health worker in Borno. It's a very sad development. I mean, these are volunteers, obviously, who were seeking to bring succor to persons who have been displaced, by the activities of Boko Haram. And we do hope, of course, the authorities, that's the Nigerian federal government, have expressed, their deepest regrets as to what has happened. We do hope that not just the Nigerian government, but indeed all others who have assisted in the past with negotiations with Boko Haram will continue, to put pressure on Boko Haram to release Leah Sharibu and indeed others who are still in their custody. I mean, this is not a time to make accusations. We know that these are captives who are in their custody and they have full and total control over this person. It's deeply regrettable that this young lady, has had to end this way. There's also the other story, by the way. I read that from Daily Trust, right at the foot of it. It said, how police officer killed female motorist in Abuja. That took place at the weekend. And she happens to be, according to the report, the niece of the former Minister of Finance, Nenadi Usman. This has been a somewhat bloody year in the Federal Capital Territory. Bayo, you recall the police themselves have also been victims. 7 of them were killed somewhere, within the phase 2 of the Federal Capital Territory of the Abuja city. And then, of course, you have had incident. There was this youth corps member who was also killed, in the Central Business District. Virtually almost the same circumstance. The police, the initial statement is that this was a case of mistaken identity. Somebody had been robbed, and then the person lodged a complaint, and the fact that the car in which the lady was driving was similar to that which had been snatched from an individual. But of course, the police authorities have also indicated.
Yes,
you have read the story.
The police has directed investigation into the case, and the officers who are concerned too have also been apprehended.
Yes.
I like that. Just before you take the editorial, there's a story on page 2. That's where you have it in greater detail of the New Telegraph. It says primaries. That's the story. 42 senators lose return tickets. And the story indicates in the first paragraph, let's just take the first 2 paragraphs, says, the first 2 paragraphs say there are indications that a high turnover of senators will hit the 9th Senate in 2019, as 42 of the 1097 senators, representing some 38.5%, failed to secure return tickets in the just concluded primaries of both the APC and PDP. Now, 67 of the 109 representing 61.5 secured return tickets from their various parties. Of course, they will have to contest against what generally the Americans refer to as the third parties, where you have two major parties. The others, without being to be disrespectful to them, are generally referred to as third parties.
All right, very quickly, let's take our editorial for this morning. It's on the Daily Sun. It's on the back page of the Daily Sun, and it's titled IMF's Timely Warning. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, recently warned Nigeria and other sub-Saharan African economies to urgently check rising debts and diversify their revenue base. It advised that they should not delay such reforms because of rising oil prices in the international markets, as the good times would not always last long. All right, Mayo, let's take a look at that. And, of course, they were asking for the implementation of the Economic and Recovery Growth Plan.
Yes, before I talk about the editorial, let's quickly remind viewers generally that the Super Eagles landed in Sfax yesterday in the evening, and they had a 1-hour training. They are built to take on the Mediterranean Knights tonight in Tunisia. You recall that the first leg at Uyo, the Super Eagles won 4-0, and we expect them to have a resounding victory today to increase their points tally. Presently, the Super Eagles have 6 points and just 1 point behind South Africa. South Africa, too, is taking on Seychelles in their home at Mahe in Seychelles. Now, talking about the editorial, there are concerns that have been raised about debt profiles of many African countries. However, in the case of Nigeria, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, had told the IMF and the World Bank conference in Bali that debt is not the problem of Nigeria as much as a revenue. In other words, when you have debt and the debt purposes are for infrastructure, not to take loans and debt and start paying salaries, then there's a tendency that it will ginger the economy and you will have the ability to be able to pay within the terms. And also, the terms of the debt is something that has to be reckoned with. The largest economies in the world, the United States and China, also have huge debts. Nations depend on such concessionary debts to improve on their infrastructure and economic facilities. It is when such debts are not deployed for productive purposes that it becomes a gruesome liability. And that is why the Minister of Finance emphasized at Bali that our challenge is not so much with the debt, because the debt can be managed and they are purposely for specific infrastructure that in the long term will improve the economy. However, our challenge is revenue generation so that we can diversify from the monocultural base of our...
Yeah, thanks a lot. Revenue generation is important, but at the base of that has to be productivity.
Yes.
How you are able to grow your gross domestic product is very, very significant. How much productive activities occur, and then how much of domestic production do you have, rather than having imports of all kinds of goods and services into the economy. I think that those are the very significant things. You can borrow, you can do all kinds of things, but you have to have the capacity to repay. And while, of course, you are having production, that's to say your GDP must outpace the growth of your GDP, must outpace your population growth rate. Yes. That's one issue that we haven't, of course, addressed significantly in recent times.
You recall about 5 years ago, there was this rebase of the Nigerian economy. Yeah. And we were told that Nigeria was the largest economy in Africa. Many people took that on the face value. What actually was done was that the non-informal sector that were not captured before were considered, and it was projected that if the non-informal sector, as huge as it is considered, then Nigeria would have been the largest economy in Africa. But a lot of people took that for face value and just assumed wrongly.
Yeah, that's
and that relates to the gross domestic product you are talking about.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, South Africa lags behind Nigeria in terms of the size of the economy. And then, of course, you also have Angola, where Angola is largely driven by the extractive sector, oil and gas, as well as diamonds production. The rebasing you're talking about now happened recently in Zimbabwe, and when the informal sector was taken into consideration, it was found that Zimbabwe's economy, of course, it was a financial basket case for many years, under ousted Robert Mugabe. That's the economy is now 40% larger.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, Bayo, for joining us on the review this morning. Hopefully, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. We'll take a short break now, and when we come back, our first item for discussion this morning is securing the blue economy. What is the blue economy all about, and how can it be secured after this break?
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir.
And your shirts are always so white.
I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results.
Shh, it's our little secret.
It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three
you are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome.
You take that one.
Yeah, take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have?
You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice.
Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about.
Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food.
I'm going to bring Mrs. Mom to come to chocolate rice made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made. Correct.
And
how they are cook it. Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Capsule for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Introducing Dettol Antiseptic Liquid in Sachet for only 40 naira.
Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
All right, you're welcome back. And if you just tuned in, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, for us to get started with our conversation on how to secure and better utilize Nigeria's blue economy, let's take this background up by our correspondent, Serafina Okon.
Maritime security is essential to supporting the blue economy. Many maritime security forums have been key supporters of the blue economy concept, particularly in the Indian Ocean region. How can Nigeria explore the co-evolution and co-dependence of blue economy and maritime security agenda? It identifies two primary interactions between the blue economy and maritime security interests. Maritime security is an enabler of the blue economy, for example, through safeguarding navigation routes, providing important oceanographic data to marine industries, and protecting rights over valuable marine resources and activities within claimed zones of maritime jurisdiction. Secondly, an often overlooked role that maritime security plays in the blue economy is by being itself a source of economic development and growth. An expanded blue economy will create greater demand for maritime security capabilities, and this in turn will trigger increased investment and growth in these capabilities. The enhanced and increasingly diverse role that maritime security will continue to play in the blue economy can be seen across all sectors. The Indian Ocean region includes large ocean areas and a range of continental and island states with diverse legal systems, development status and political agendas. From a legal perspective, the challenges of regulating fisheries in such contexts are significant. Yet, if the blue economy goals are to be achieved and food security, livelihood and economic space on fishery resources assured, then sustainable management and utilization must be a priority. The imperative is clear when environmental degradation, the impact of climate change, and growing populations are taken into account. Good Morning Nigeria seeks to explore marine resource governance in Nigerian Ocean, the legal landscape relevant to the management of fisheries, as well as selected national law and policy approaches. What should be the recommendations for advancing law and policy to achieve blue economy goals and addressing pressures and ensure food security and livelihoods for future generations? This in a moment, guests will propose solutions on the program.
All right, thank you very much, Serafina, for that background. And joining us on the studios now to discuss in greater detail how to secure and better utilize Nigeria's blue economy, would like to welcome Mr. Tony Ejo Umabonike, his President, Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agents.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much.
We've always had you from Lagos, and I was asking you off camera how you sailed into Abuja this morning.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to have an experience of Abuja studio.
All right. Good to have you. It's another regular with us in terms of transportation issues. We have Mani Ochuboju, who is a legal practitioner and transport consultant. Mani, pleasure to have you with us again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me again.
All right. And from Lagos, we expected two guests, but only one of them is immediately available. Let's quickly introduce him. Is Engineer Emmanuel Ilori. He's executive, that's right, you see him on the right side of your split screen, Executive Director, Association of Maritime Engineers and Surveyors. So you also have maritime surveyors, by the way. Engineer Ilori, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
Gentlemen, I think let's begin this discussion from Lagos with Engineer Ilori to give us a sense of what the blue economy, when we talk about the blue economy, what are we talking about before we start talking about securing the blue economy, the gold mine in it, what it is we need to tap from it. What is the blue economy? Give us a sense of what we're talking about here.
It's generally acceptable that 70% of world's good is carried by sea, and the sea over years and centuries have remained the main source of global interconnectivity in terms of goods, in terms of transportation. So therefore, the blue economy is all that we can derive from the sea itself, either be it transportation, be it food generation, be it this maintenance of the energy supply chain. So generally, the whole world more or less will depend on the seas to be able to survive, whether we like it or not. So we need to look at the issue of the blue seas and our rivers to be able to fully appreciate the importance of the blue economy, not only to the world, but to Nigeria as part of the global community.
All right, Engineer Laurie, thanks a lot for your succinct response. Let's come back to our Abuja studios now and bring in Mani Ochubojo to give us his own sense of what a blue economy encompasses and whether there is sufficient appreciation of the huge resources and opportunities that lie out there.
The blue economy has become increasingly important in the light of the globalization of the world. The ocean seaway connects all of the world. If you take a single matter relating to, let's say, a vessel, for example, it has an international component. The vessel may have a Nigerian flag, and the crew on it may be from Panama. The cargo may be going to Greece, or maybe going to Germany, or maybe going to Ghana, or maybe going to South Africa. So the internationalization of the world, the increasing integration of the world makes the blue economy an essential part of our day-to-day existence, including the cost of freight, how it impacts on inflation, how it impacts on what we eat, and more importantly, that 99% of almost everything we import into Nigeria, for example, comes by the sea. That makes the issue of blue economy a daily matter for each one of us and a policy matter for the government and an essential part of the productive economy in general.
Thank you very much. Iju Wabonike, of course, he just mentioned now the percentage of imports that come in via the waterways. From your perspective, how appreciative are we of the importance of the blue economy and indeed of the opportunities inherent in the blue economy?
Just like the last speaker said, blue economy as it relates to freight forwarding is very simple. It's a total chain logistics system. A situation where whatever is happening in every sector of the world is affecting you here. Just like we are in theater, we have a network of relationships, and we have a very wonderful body, WCO, WTO, all of these things compiling together, making sure that blue economy is what we are into. It's a total chain logistic and the globalization of issues concerning freight forwarding. And I think we have a whole lot of advantages over there because it's becoming a one single family.
When you say advantages, let's now consider the advantage because it is considered the seventh largest economy. When we say advantage, what are the advantages inherent to the blue economy? Let's dig in.
The advantages of blue economy is that whatever is happening to Nigeria is equally happening in the USA and it's equally happening in Singapore, and all of us are networked. Advantages in that sense that even the freight charges and tariffs are the same all over the world. And the relationship is that you have to network with the relationships with other ship owners and the shipfarers. And the whole thing is coming together as a one big family. So it is easy for you to do a business. I can stay here in my comfort of my office to do a serious business with the Singaporeans and network in the United States of America, and we get the whole things done together, ship the goods and receive the goods without seeing each other.
All right, thank you very much. Let's return to Engineer Laurie in Lagos. Of course, we earlier introduced him as of the Maritime Association of Maritime Engineers and Surveyors. Engineer Laurie, give us a sense of how appreciative we are, because there are a number of landlocked countries in the world that are envious of the littoral states. In other words, these are countries that are bounded by the sea or by the ocean, such as Nigeria is. How appreciative are we of this humongous advantage, and therefore, how have we treated this gift of nature?
Biggest challenge that we have with respect to the issue of goods distribution, the important thing we need to realize that we as a nation, we are significantly blessed because we can help in on the issue of the global good distribution network. Now, the interland countries, where the landlocked countries depend on the littoral states, therefore, the issue of intermodalism comes to play here, where we can connect the three segments of the goods distribution network, where we move goods by sea, we move goods by rail, we move goods by road. Now, Nigeria is not taking a full advantage of the maritime aspects of the intermodal network, which means we are not taking full advantage of the huge opportunities available to us. Now, when we talk about the blue economy, it's not just about taking goods by sea. Let us look at the Nigerian inland waterways, for example. Now, that is a huge significant opportunity economically that we are sitting upon, that we can use actually to distribute the goods within the Nigerian system. Well, at the moment, that is a part of a system that is not being used at this present time, which means we are now dependent on goods distribution by road. And you can imagine the safety issues inherent in the overcrowded roads, the issue of congestion. Take the issue of the Apapa port, for example, the economic effect on the congestion on our roads. So these are issues that we are now looking at holistically when we talk about blue economy. It's not just about the goods by sea that we say, and even Nigerians at the moment, we are not participating fully in the international sea trade. So we need to look back on Nigeria itself. What is the national interest, and how can we harness the full opportunities of the blue economy to our own advantage? And we are not doing that presently.
But then one wonders, what are the hiccups, what are the bottlenecks that we encounter when we talk about the blue economy?
Well, primarily the issue is we cannot have economic derivatives of the blue economy without considering safety and security. These are the paramount issues that we need to consider. Now, in terms of security, nobody wants to do business in an environment that is not secure. Now, security itself is not just about the oceans. We need to think about the internal security, the inland waterway security, because don't forget that the bandits don't grow on the seas, on the oceans. They grow from within before they get to the ocean. So we need to look at the internal security of our inland waterways primarily, and then to look at the statutory agents responsible for the maintenance of internal waterway security. That's the Nigerian Police Force. Now, we need to look at the synergy between the Nigerian Police Force and the Nigerian Navy. We don't necessarily want to overstretch the Nigerian Navy because they are covering everywhere. So we need to look at the synergy between these two important security organizations. The security of the inland waterways is an essential part of that network. If we are going to harness fully the blue economy, we need to make the environment secure. Now, on the issue of safety, now we are talking of safety of navigation, safety of operation, not only within the inland waterway system, but within our coastal waters and within the global community. So we need to take our full responsibility for the safety within our waters, either internal or external. And then there's a whole raft of issues regarding the safety of our waters. It's only when we have the waters safe and secure that we can start to think of harnessing the blue economy. Either we want to go underwater, we want to look at the various resources there, we want to look at the energy supply chain. The issue of safety and security of this environment is very important.
All right, Engineer Laurie, thank you very much. Gentlemen, we'll come back again to the opportunities that are inherent in the blue economy. But since Engineer Laurie is already taking off on the aspect of safety and security, I think it's a matter for us to address. Right now, Mani Ochuboju, what's your take on this, perhaps from a comparative basis? That's why I asked the question, are we sufficiently cognizant of the huge potentials that are there in the blue economy, and therefore, how have we responded to what God has blessed us with, by looking at it, for instance, from safety and a security perspective?
Kingsley, I honestly believe we have not even begun to tap the enormous potentials of the blue economy that Nigeria has. We talk a lot about what is going on in Lagos. We have ships coming into Lagos and batting. We have about 3,000 ships coming into Lagos and all of that, and less vessels going into Port Harcourt and Calabar and all that. But my take is that that is just the tip of the iceberg. Comparatively, a country like Singapore looks tiny little, no disrespect to Singapore. Singapore is as small as Akwa Ibom. No disrespect to Akwa Ibom either. They have about 1,000 vessels or ships plus, 1,030, sometimes 1,300,000 going into, 1,300 going into Singapore on an annual basis. And in Nigeria, we get 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, and we go clapping. That is a joke. We even occupy a more strategic position than Singapore. We have the Gulf of Guinea to think about, right up to South Africa to think about, which is a wider terrain than that little island Singapore occupies. So we've not even started. And one of the reasons why we've not started also has to do with the infrastructure, the transport infrastructure in place. They are so backward. They are so underdeveloped, and they are utterly neglected. Kingsley, you've had occasion to raise those issues in the past. Those are things that we really have to also deal with for us to begin to think about even the safety of navigation. Safety of navigation has to do with dredging that we've discussed before. Safety of navigation has to do with clearing the pathway of these vessels, which sometimes are neglected for years and years and years, and others bump into it. Safety of navigation has to do with the clearing of the pathways. Vessels take about 20 days to clear. If a vessel is lingering around the coast of Lagos for 20 days to bat, it presents an opportunistic, opportunity for an idle fisherman to throw something in there or go and attack them and all of that. It shouldn't wait for 3 days. So when you have, just as we have trailers queued up in the streets of Lagos, that's how we have vessels queued up. If vessels are queuing up from Nigeria all the way to Togo to come and bat in Lagos, of course, that issue in itself presents opportunity for armed robbery, for piracy, and all of that deals with the issue of security that our friend in Lagos just highlighted. And we can talk a lot more about it, but the key issue is, what about the automation of the equipments in our own ports? What about the ease of doing business that you've just discussed also, Kingsley, with due respect, that you've discussed in the past? What about the ease of shipping that we've also discussed in the past? All these are critical issues that have to do with safety and security. They go hand in hand. If, as a truck driver, I spend 10 days to bring my goods to Apapa port, 10 days, minimum. The average turnaround time for a trailer from Abuja to Apapa is 14 days, average. Sometimes they spend 20 days. What about the stress, the safety, the security of the driver and the persons, and even the stress on the owners of the product? The products themselves get bad before they begin to export them. So that in itself impacts on trading. It impacts on the value of what we are taking overseas. So there are other dimensions to these issues that we have to sit up. And it is good that you're raising it, because it is actually an alarming matter, whereby Nigeria now is rated as worse than Somalia for criminality on the high sea. Somalia and the Horn of Africa in the last 10 years used to be the emblem of piracy in the world. It overtook the Asian pirates, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Somalia became the worst and the most dreaded place to sail. But no, now it is Nigeria, and it's something that we've muted. And to the point that, no disrespect to NIMASA, they are disputing some of the figures, but the facts speak for themselves, as we say in law, res ipsa loquitur. The facts today is that in the last 10 years consecutively, Nigeria have beaten Somalia to the record, have been the worst area to navigate, the worst area to ship, the worst area to bring your vessel in. Up till now, it is on record, even to today. In our last meeting here, sir, just one last point. You remember a naval officer came here, senior naval officer. He made a very eloquent representation that the Navy are doing a great job. Yes, he must be right. He must know something that we don't know. But what does the fact say about Nigeria and the West Coast and the Gulf of Guinea being the worst navigational waters in the world? Maybe the Navy needs to do more. I'll leave it at that, sir.
All right, Tony.
Okay, well, I will take it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
For past 15 years now, Nigerian ports are getting a little bit better. Because if you look at the areas when we talk about security, look at when we call people wharf rats and all the rest of them, today is a bygone. Mm-hmm. Secondly, after the concessioning of the ports, the concessionaires are actually putting the ports in a right perspective. The third thing is that the roads, the infrastructures are bad. The gateway to Nigerian ports are extremely very bad.
And a lot of work has been going on there for some time.
Yes, the works are going on there, but you can see with me that there are so much gridlock there. And again, I have to say that it is all about Nigerian syndrome. Every single Nigerian wants to come to port to extort money. So making things very difficult, making things not working the way they should be. And all the concessionaires actually not listening. Nobody, no single human being is taking control of these concessionaires. They are doing the things they want to do. They are increasing the tariffs they really want to take. And even when the vessels are actually delayed, they put back the whole demurrages back to the importers. And in fact, they're taking laws into their hands, just like any other government agencies in the ports. So it's a total problematic issue. It's something that government will sit down and look into it properly and see what is exactly the problem. I can say that the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria actually came up with ease of doing business. And to today, nothing has happened. Nobody is even respecting the simple principles of ease of doing business in the ports. So what I'm trying to say in effect is that it's not just because of the piracy alone, it's not just because of the problems in the port, but everyone in the port is a problem.
All right, Mr. Iju Mwabonuke, thank you very much. Let's return to Engineer Ilori. Engineer Ilori, again, can we have a comparative basis to evaluate where we are now? Because a lot of work has been going on by the various agencies, those who control the ports, those who are in charge of safety and security of navigable waters and all of that, including the shippers, of course. So what more, from your perspective, is required to enhance safety and security in exploiting Nigeria's blue economy?
Well, one of the major issues we have is the charting and the condition of our waters, because those who navigate the waters need to understand what is lying below the waters. And it is to record that the Nigerian Navy Hydrographic Department, they are now stepping up the game to ensure that we have safe navigable waters. That's very, very important. Now, within the inland waterway system, that is still work in progress. We need to get that right. Now, another issue that I was raised earlier on is regarding the underutilization of the eastern ports. It's a significant issue. Lagos congestion can be improved if we improve the utilization of the eastern ports. It's a misnomer to say that we need to dredge those ports to very huge depths before we can start to gain the economic advantage of these areas. We can deploy very shallow, small draft vessels. You see they're small, but they are relatively small, but then any one of them can take nearly 30 to 20 tankers load on them, or 20 containers on them. So you can imagine the improvement that we'll have in the eastern ports when we begin to deploy the short and small vessels to ply these routes. So they don't necessarily need to be as deep as we are proposing for us to utilize the areas very well. Now, the issue of short sea trade, yes, Lagos can continue to remain the major hub for distribution of cargo, but then we can then use smaller vessels, which we call short sea trade, to trade between Nigeria and the other parts of the African Atlantic coast. Now, with regards to Singapore, yes, Singapore made a conscious effort to put the maritime industry at the center plank of their economic development. Now, Nigeria had the ARGP recently, and not a single mention is made of the maritime sector or the importance of the blue economy to our economy, of the blue seas to our economy. So we need to revisit that and make sure that part of our national plan puts in place the recovery of the maritime industry and the blue economy that we are talking about. At this point in time, it's not part of our strategy. So we need to revisit that and make sure we put the blue economy, or otherwise the maritime industry, as a center plank of our national economic development. Because as a maritime nation, the economy can be improved better if we take full advantage of our blue seas and of the maritime economy. At this point in time, yes, Nigeria is a major importer and probably little exporter in terms of dry goods, but a major exporter of wet goods and wet cargo. And we are not taking advantage of that. So you can imagine the foreign exchange loss by virtue of not participating in the blue economy, particularly the carriage, the importation, and the exportation of our goods. So we still have a lot of work to be done if we are going to reap the full benefits of our economy. The big international nations, yes, they harness the blue economy and the maritime industry. Why is Nigeria not revisiting that? UK became great, America became great because they harness their blue seas. So what are we doing to make sure that we harness that? Yes, we can make laws, we have the cabotage regime, we have the local content, but we are not looking at the technical dimension of the development of this industry. Let me just stop there.
So, Engineer Laurie, what is the technical dimension? I mean, just give us a sense of that. What's the technical dimension of this perspective?
The blue economy is technical by nature. So we cannot just rely on the legal aspects alone. We need to develop the technical dimensions of the industry. Take, for example, we have a cabotage regime that did not take into consideration shipbuilding and ship maintenance in Nigeria. So, and we said in the cabotage that, oh, we must build ships in Nigeria, we must repair ships in Nigeria, we won't have Nigerian human capacity, but we have not done anything significant to actually develop this. We went to the Americans to copy the cabotage regime, but at that point in time, the Americans were already building ships, but they were not utilizing their own trade fully. That's why the Jones Act came in America. So we went to copy that, but Nigeria has been what we are. We have not developed our own technical capacity to be able to take full advantage of our blue seas. Take, for instance, even the issue of fisheries. Nigeria has a very, very vast ocean, but we are still importing fish. The foreigners come into our ports, take our fish away, and then they re-export them to Nigeria, whereas we can develop our own fish trawlers, our own fish processing facilities. The fishery protection scheme needs to be in place, and then Nigeria can take advantage of that. Instead of importing fish, we can feed our people once we develop the oceans, and we can take full advantage of the fishery industry that's abound in the oceans. Just to stop for a while.
Well, you keep stopping, and then, of course, I keep re-inviting you. Just before we come back to our other guests in Abuja, I just want to ask you two questions. You talked about the fact that we don't have shipbuilding or ship maintenance capacities. What about the Niger dock?
Niger dock at the time was established to be the solution to Nigeria and for Nigeria to take off. And then other nations copied the model of Niger dock. And at that point in time, again, we had 22 vessels that should have been a prototype for us to build upon. Unfortunately, again, as things will happen in Nigeria, that project was abandoned. I mean, Niger Dock facility is supposed to be a star piece in West Africa. Unfortunately, it's not so. It was privatized, and then the investment that is supposed to be there did not happen. Yeah, we can revisit Niger Dock and make it a showcase of shipbuilding and ship repair in Nigeria. But at this point in time, it's just taking a little bit of that trade. So we need to revisit what is truly in our national interest, and then to put the necessary resources, both human and material, at the disposal of the development of that sector. We trained some international experts many years back, but we have not utilized them. We have countries like Malaysia, even Saudi Arabia, those of them who trained this equal set of people many years back, and they went back into the system to develop their nation. But unfortunately, we have not utilized the expertise that we spend money to train to develop the Nigerian sector. So we need to look at the technical dimension of the maritime industry if we are truly going to grow. We need to develop international partnership. And then we know that Nigeria is a big nation that everybody wants to trade with, but we need to look at the technical dimension and go into serious technical cooperation to be able to develop the sector.
Thank you very much. Let's bring in Manny now. He's drawn, Engineer Laurie has drawn our attention to the issue of the technical aspect of the blue economy, because a lot of times there seems to be a lot of focus on the legal framework, but then the technical aspect of it is also very, very vital.
Yes, it is. Rhoda, thanks. You see, one of the aspects of the area of work NIMASA needs to focus on, other than regulation, safety and security, is as their act. The act setting up NIMASA talks about promotion and development of indigenous shipping industry and commercial trading. Those areas they need to also look at. And how they can do it is, I think one of the things I heard them saying the other day, that they are partnering with the World Maritime University in Sweden to train new hands in looking at shipbuilding, ship repairs, ship management, signal equipments, small boat navigational skills, and other things in that regard. Secondly, we can also help some of these young stars who are interested in maritime business and make it easy for them to either hire a vessel to do some of the shuttle, which our friend in Lagos, Emmanuel, referred to. Some of the shuttles of carrying goods from Lagos to Port Harcourt, Lagos to Calabar, or Lagos to Warri ports. Shuttle business. The industry is so big. There's so many aspects for which so many hands can be employed. We are talking of an industry that can employ an average of 300,000 people gainfully. And they can make money in every aspect, even from warehousing. Stevedoring, getting on the vessel, bringing things down. These are all aspects which can be dealt with. Dealing with loading of goods on the train. Loading of goods on the train is an aspect which can be developed. Preparing warehousing and looking at even moving goods from warehouse to the hinterland, other than using the waterways, which our friend in Lagos referred to. Okay, fine. Even waterways. How much of waterway transportation do we have in Nigeria? We have taxi business everywhere. But you can do taxi business on the waterway as well. You can have as many vessels for hire on the waterways as well. And this includes carrying dry cargo, which our friend in Lagos, Emmanuel, referred to, and even liquid cargo. Liquid cargo is one of the biggest area of risk we face in Lagos right now with all these big tankers. Right. All those liquid cargos don't even need to go on the road anymore. They can go on the waterways. They can go on the rail. So these are aspects which can be encouraged. Young men, young women can be encouraged to go into this business. Your vessel can be hired just as your taxi can be hired. And you can make more money running a higher shuttle service than piracy. Piracy, you get killed, you end up in hospital, you end up in the graveyard, you end up in prison.
No, well, it's a prison before graveyard. Because graveyard is the final place. Just before we bring in Ijo Nwaboneke, let's go very quickly to Lagos. Engineer Lori, very briefly, because some years ago, the commonest stories about Nigeria's blue economy had to do, for instance, with illegal bunkering and crude oil theft. But in recent years, in the last 2-3 years, there's been less of such stories. What has been the game changer? Very briefly.
The game changer is the Nigerian Navy. We need to give the Nigerian Navy credit because they are increasingly making the Nigerian waters difficult for the criminal elements to operate. And let me quickly say this. We don't need to paint Nigeria red that Nigeria is the home base of criminality in the Gulf of Guinea. We must give the Nigerian Armed Forces credit for improving the security environment of that area. By continuing to paint the Nigerian maritime environment as the headquarters of maritime criminality is increasing the cost of goods to Nigeria, and that means we are passing that cost to the consumers. We need to continue to promote the Nigerian maritime environment as safe, and thereby we will be reducing the cost of sending goods to Nigeria. Nigeria is not a war zone, but the world would like us to believe that Nigeria is a war zone and that our water is a war zone. We are not, and we are still better than the Gulf of Aden, where people report of the criminalities. Yes, there's a lot of improvement in the Nigerian maritime environment, so we need to take that into consideration. So the issue of Nigeria being a maritime war zone, we need to downplay that and to give credit to the Nigerian Navy and the Nigerian Armed Forces for the good work that they are doing to improve the environment.
All right, thank you very, very much, Engineer Emmanuel Lori. Thank you very much. Let's get the final thoughts of Tony Nwaboneke. It's obvious that this has to do with a medium-term and a long-term plan. How can, what could be our immediate step, or what could be the short-term plan in terms of deepening our blue economy?
Okay, it's very simple. What I think we should first of all do is to be extremely in line with what the principles is all about. What exactly do we really want to get? The blue economy is all about getting the things from the sea and getting the right things from the sea. And I think constitutionally, and the right thing to do is to strictly be on import guidelines and the way it's supposed to be done. Then another thing is very clear. We put in so many constitutional issues like cabotage, which is not actually functioning very well. We need to do things about cabotage. Then we need to think about our intermodals. The railway stations are not actually working very properly. I remember that we have an inland container terminal in Kano and Kaduna, and the rails are not working. It takes almost so many weeks or days to get the consignments up to that level. Then we are talking about international standard. Well, let's talk about Nigerian standard about these things. We talk about air freighting. You discover that even the roads are very bad. Then we mentioned so many things about the total chain logistics. We see that things are not actually working according to the plans and the things we are going to do about it. So on my own take, we need to do more. We need to be strictly on guidelines of what government have actually said. I must confess that this government is actually working well. It concerns maritime issues because apart from these bottlenecks and the areas of problems, the piracy issue, to my own understanding, is not as high risk as before. And again, today, the section of the maritime is working effectively well, except where charges of tariffs are not looked into, where people are taking laws into their hands. And internationally, I want us to think about inland waterways. Inland waterways, for example, we have gotten a new managing director of inland waterways, Senator Memora. I think very soon he should sit down and look into the inland waterways because it's important to navigate to all the hinders of the areas with our goods and services. Just like the barrister said, we can even do transportation by inland waterways. Yes, giving an example of eastern ports. Eastern ports have been so muchly underutilized. If you get to Port Harcourt Seaport today, they are beckoning for vessels, and nothing is coming there. If you get to Warri today, I will tell you that no vessel has come to Warri for almost 1 week or two. And if you get to One, which is the only area where they're actually working a little bit for, you find out that they are not getting the capacities of what they want to do. Then I have looked into it and exactly what the problems are. The problem is simple. The chain import and supply ideas, the demand and supply ideas, the consumption rate and the areas. Then another thing is clear: the tariff and the government policies that neglects those areas. Then finally, we need to encourage inland waterways, container terminals, like what Anambra State Governor has actually started doing. He has actually put in some inland container terminal, Anambra container bonded terminal, which he wants Onitsha and Newi importers to begin to take advantage of.
All right.
And these are the areas.
All right, Ejo Uwambonuke, thank you very much. Of course, we are pressed for time. It's a day where we have two topics to take, and very quickly we'll take these two tweets. Ugo Onwoha. It says, your guest in Lagos, that's Engineer Emmanuel Lori, talked about developing other ports elsewhere. Nigeria knows what to do to decongest Lagos ports. We have willfully refused to do so. So we should live with the unpleasant consequences. That's coming from Ugo Onwoha in Lagos. Now, Sani Michael Omakoji. Now, we always have beautiful blueprints and policies on national issues, but our lukewarm approach to those policies often deny us of results. And it says that our exposure to take advantage of the blue economy is well below expectation. Now, we should walk our talk and make our economy grow. So those are the two tweets that we have. As we said, there are many opportunities in the blue economy, and I'm sure that in the subsequent program we might be able to explore all of this. One we didn't talk about, for instance, is marine tourism. I don't know if ship cruises come here. All right, so that's one area that you have to take a look at going forward. Plus, of course, fishing. And fish is more healthy than other sources of protein, animal protein, by the way. From
right,
Lagos.
So on that note, we want to say a very big thank you to all of our guests who have joined us this morning. First of all, I'd like to say a very big thank you to Engineer Emmanuel Ilori. He's the Executive Director, Association of Maritime Engineers and Surveyors. He joined us from our Lagos studio. Thank you very much for your time and thoughts on the program this morning. And also to our guests here who joined us in our Abuja studios, we have Mani Ujubo. He's always a pleasure to have when we talk about issues of maritime. He's a legal practitioner and a transport consultant. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having
And finally, a very big thank you to Tony Juwabunike. He's the President, Association of Nigerian Licensed Customs Agent. Thank you for joining us in our Abuja studios today. I hope you had a good experience.
Thank you
from
very
here.
much. Yes, I experienced a very good thing.
All right, we'll take a short break now. And when we come back, our second item for discussion this morning is a national policy on IDPs. So stay with us.
Why don't you people sell imported materials here? As beautiful as the shop is.
Auntie, buying foreign goods does not help our economy. Neither does it boost local production. And the good thing is Nigerian-made products are high quality. Really? And to make Nigeria great again, that is why I only sell made in Nigeria products. Because change begins with me.
I'm convinced. Change begins with me too!
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria junior category ages 6 to 12, and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
All right, you're welcome back. And of course, it's our second item for discussion this morning on the program. We already have our guest seated here in the studio, and we're looking at the national policy on IDPs. And we're being joined by Okeke Anya. He's a programs manager of CISLAC, and that's the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And also we have with us Reverend Father Emeka Chris Obezu. He is a civil society network on migration. Thank you, Father, for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, let's begin. Of course, we know that with the advent of the activities of Boko Haram, especially in the northeastern part of the country, and clashes involving herders and farmers, Nigeria's population of internally displaced persons has swollen in recent years. So is there a sense that there is perhaps no framework governing the management of IDPs, their conditions, and indeed their rehabilitation ultimately?
Yeah, thank you again for having me and on discussing on this important issue on the policy for IDPs management in Nigeria. Yes, for right now, we don't have what we call a foundational legal framework to do that, and that is what this policy is about. The policy provides that legal framework, provides institutional capacity for different agencies that are working on migration, and most especially the coordinating element of that aspect of the management, which it reposes on the National Commission for Refugee, Migrants and IDPs. And then specifies the role of other agencies like the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and then as provides also for most especially all these issues being done within the Nigerian recognition and ratification of the Kampala Convention that provides for the protection of IDPs in Africa.
All right, Okeke Anya, he's specifically spoke to us on what this policy intends to provide. Are there other areas it will cover?
Yeah, definitely. One of when issues of displacement happen, what people look out for is for you to have what we call a durable solution. How do you resettle? How do you return people? How do you reintegrate them into society? But you find out that we don't have a mechanism to do this. What we have been doing in Nigeria is to handle displacement issues as emergency issue. And you find out that, in quotes, when those emergencies seems to have been solved, people, those agencies seem to walk away and leaving these people without resettling them, without integrating them. That is why you have, after how many years of Bakassi, you still have IDPs of Bakassi. You mentioned about Boko Haram and issues of herdsmen. That is not the only displacement problems we have. We have internal and communal clashes that leads to displacement. We have the floods that ravage our communities that leads to displacement. Yes, when the floods happen, you see government running up and down, agencies going up and down to try to solve this problem. As soon as those floods, recedes, displaced people are left on their own. Those durable solutions are not found for them. This is what we feel. If we have a policy, it will begin to go beyond emergency management to address durable solutions for IDPs. So government needs to, deal with this for us to come up with a policy that takes the whole gamut of displacement and not just look at it from that emergency perspective.
What are we seeing now with regard to what the respective agencies are doing? Because who takes the lead? Who are the first responders? We see NEMA is all over the place.
Yeah.
You see the ICRC, that's the Red Cross. They're also all over the place. And sometimes you also see the Commission for Refugees also being on it. And then special bodies set up by government. Let's take the Northeast again. I will refer to that because displacement can be caused by a number of factors, either conflict, which is most common, or environmental. Now, let's Pine, for instance, that's a presidential initiative on the Northeast. So what happens? What's playing out now? Is there a coordination? Are they working across purposes?
Well, in terms of emergency management, I think government and all these agencies are trying enough to deal with those emergencies. But what we are saying, beyond those emergencies, long-term role, you find out that those agencies shy away. And that should be a differentiation between emergency management, which basically falls under the purview of an agency like NEMA, and also that longer-term management of IDPs, which ordinarily should fall under the purview of the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons. So that, yes, you do your emergency, and you stop at a point. And then we begin to talk about reintegration, rehabilitation of this, which another agency takes over. Because emergencies occur. So that you will be able to face other emergencies while those ones that you have been able to bring a kind of balancing, another agency takes up and finishes the job so that we don't have displacement being almost like a permanent feature of somebody's life.
But then I think we've had NEMA and some Pine here several times. When you talk about their role, they tell you part of it's rehabilitation and relocating these people back to their communities. Are you saying that this is not supposed to be done by them?
No, what we are saying, do they have the mandate? Do we even... No problem. If we have a policy that says that NEMA, Pine, or whoever has this mandate to do this. What we see is that we don't have any framework. There is no government policy that says that it is NEMA that does this, or Pine that does this, or National Commission for Refugees that does this. So at some point, you find out that they live, yes, they work according to what they have and leave these displaced people at their own behest.
All right, at the mercy of the elements sometimes. Thank you very much, Okeke Ayan. Let's bring in again Reverend Father. Reverend Father, what particulars would you like to see in a policy on IDPs, for instance?
That takes us to what does a policy do in itself? The policy, first and foremost, provides that institutional framework. And within the institutional framework, there is also a structural capacity to be able to deal with the issue, what the policy is expected to. Policies are issue and situation oriented. And for instance, the IDP we are talking is an issue and a situation. And so making a policy for IDP should address, like my colleague said, those essential issues of IDPs. There are two elements or two situations that are involved in the IDP case. The first is the emergency situation, and then we have the post-emergency. And each of these has received a different reaction or response. In the emergency situation, we are talking of immediate material relief. And that is where you rush immediately to provide those things that this situation had deprived these people of. And then we have emergency agencies that do that. Then after that, in the post-emergency, we are now talking about sustainable, durable solution that will make these individuals who were once displaced no longer remain in that situation. And this is where we begin to talk about reintegration, rehabilitation, and resettlement where the case may be. So a policy that deals with the holistic dimensions of the issues concerned with IDPs should specify as it is that the role of coordinating IDP reposes in the institution which has already, in Nigerian own system, has already from a presidential directive as far back as 2009, directed a commission to take care of the protection of IDPs and also provision of their durable solution. And that commission is the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and IDPs. So, and then within that same framework, it should provide a collaboration, because the services they bring are not in competition with or contradiction with each other, but need to be coordinated in a collaborative way. And that coordination is what a specified agency that has that mandate could do.
There's no doubt about it that on account of the several instances of displacement that we have seen in the country over the past decade or more, the issue of rehabilitation and reintegration has been a sore point. Yes. Yeah, usually when the emergency breaks, you find the fire brigade rush to attend to the needs, immediate needs, sometimes appropriately, other times somewhat shoddily. But then, after a while, the displaced persons are left, to fend for themselves. But what exactly, would be the kick in? That's why I asked the question, the particulars. You talked about now coordination, which is the function of the, would be a function of the Commission on Refugees and Migrants and Internally Displaced Persons. What other things would you like to see? Can the Commission, for instance, give directives to NEMA? Can it give directives to a state government? Can it go, who has responsibility? Is this a national policy that the federal government itself will take charge, even when the persons who are displaced, for instance, are, of course, residing in states and local governments?
Yes. We have actually, the civil society and other stakeholders were part of the drafting of this policy, which the government itself is a property of the government, just in the process of being adopted DP person. Now, reintegration does not necessarily mean just like my colleague said, when the flood is over there, you tell them flood is over there, we're gone. Reintegration might be this person no longer find it durable to go to where they came from. And as a Nigerian, they could also resettle where they are. And so that agency that has the capacity will now, within the mandate that the policy had given, be able to speak to the direct or the appropriate agency or ministry in the country to say, it is your role to do this, to make these persons settle where they are within these provisions that has also granted for their own well-being. So these are the particular things I think if we adopt that policy, we would at the end of it all achieve a better management of the lives and well-being of the individual migrant person, IDP persons.
Where are we on the policy as we speak?
Right now, it is still in the process. It has done the first review after 2012. We know it has also gone to the Federal Executive Council, and I think it is at that stage where they are right now. Sometimes in the news it has filtered out too, that within that council there might be a committee that has been specified to make a recommendation to the Federal Executive Council to take the final decision on that.
Keke, I'd like you to give us a sense of, what are the challenges in terms of managing internally displaced person in Nigeria, in this part of the world?
I think for me, maybe before I go into that, let me just maybe add up something which you asked in terms of the policy and maybe if it is a national policy and where does the states and local government come in. Yes, it is a national policy. And normally, the government at the federal level normally will come up with a broader framework on how issues should be handled in the entire country. But that policy spoke to issues, even the roles of host communities, the roles of IDPs themselves when they are dealing with host communities. So it is not just something that, it is an Abuja kind of stuff. Yeah. So it is something that permeates every strata, even to the lowest level, where communities will know what their responsibilities are to IDPs, IDPs will know what their responsibilities are to the community, so that they will live in that symbiotic and friendly environment. Now, coming back to your question, for me, one of the biggest problems we've seen in getting this policy passed through is what I would call unnecessary rivalry among various agencies that are handling internally, that have one role or the other, or one mandate or the other to deal with internally displaced persons. But what has always been our appeal to all of them, we are not necessarily interested in who, because we don't work for government anyway. We are civil society groups. But our main interest is that they should shed some of these, their rivalries, to think deeply on how these people suffer, so that we can get this policy.
Mr. Ayan, just last week, I'm sorry to jump in. Last week, we were discussing response to disasters in Nigeria. And one of the issues that, of course, that came up has to do with the fact that you're having somewhat slow responses from the subnational levels. That's to say, the states and local governments. We have NEMA, a couple of states have SEMA,
all of
but
them.
they only had just a semblance of SEMA, and not SEMA, at work, SEMA that can respond to emergencies. What, in the draft policy, who or which of the organs at the state and local government levels are being targeted to spearhead this role with regard to accommodation, rehabilitation, and even reintegration of IDPs?
Okay. The draft policy did not make those elaborate. The draft policy did not make those elaborate pronouncements of who handles it at the state level. Remember, it's a national policy, and a national policy may not be able to delve so much in terms of paperwork on the roles of the state. Remember, the state remains. They are somewhat independent when it comes to, because we are in a federal system. So if it is a national policy, the national policy will try as much as possible to give a holistic framework. It is still behoves on the states to work out some of how they want to manage displacement in their own area. The work CISLAC, for instance, is doing, we have been working in Cross River State, because Cross River has had issues of displacement, refugee problems because of people coming in from Cameroon and the rest of them. For them to come up with their own humanitarian policy on how to deal with their own specific internal problems. We're also working around Adamawa to also have that. But what we are saying is that when it comes to a national policy, you don't expect a national policy to come and begin to make recommendations for states.
The reason I asked that question has to do with coordination.
Yeah, what's going to
Yeah, coordination. Because, NEMA today can say, look, I would link up with SEMA in a particular state. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I think I'm interested in that question because it's very vital in actually delivering the mandate of that policy. And this is why it is important. Why it is important that the policy is adopted quickly, because on its own, as an agency that is coordinating migration in the country, NCFRMI, the National Commission, has already within its own platform a decentralization process that has taken its missions down to the state levels and also getting down to local governments. So what this will do in terms of IDP management, if this is eventually adopted and they have their own responsibility, they now know it is another issue. We think nothing, any of them is worth more than the life of one of these IDP persons. And also it is important for us to know that IDP is not a natural condition of anybody. It is an emergency situation that could happen to anyone at any time. And we remember the recent earthquake or something we had in Abuja, so to say. I mean, what if that is blown and such number of persons are displaced? And then maybe if they are important people, then they will attract important attention or more attention. But we are talking of something that is a national framework upon which any other thing can work.
All right, thank you very much. Aspects of what we are talking about can be found in international humanitarian law. So why then does it appear somewhat challenging for us to immediately cobble together a national policy on IDPs?
Yeah, coming back to that again, I think we just need what we normally call the political will to do that, because since Nigeria ratified the Kampala Convention, which everybody, in fact, it is the first continental convention that people have acceded to when it comes to issues of displacement. That this is just the first, that Nigeria ratified it. Nigeria was one of the first 15 countries that ratified that convention. And it is amazing, actually, to say that, and we ratified this when we did not even have this huge number of displaced persons. It is just amazing to wonder why we could not, you know, put our heads together and say this is how we should drive issues around displacement. Whether it is PIN, normally displacement issues is usually not done by one particular agency. It is a multi-sectoral kind of work because you need to deal with children, you need to deal with women, you need to deal with health, you need to deal with security. So you need to deal with even the environment itself. So it is not maybe that, oh, if one person takes it, he is now going to do everything because they may not have the expertise. You still need each and every of these sectors to work together, come around and do it. I think we should just have that political will to push it through so that we can now have a framework because people are left behind. I can tell you that I went to Ebonyi State and found out that there was a problem, a communal clash in Ebonyi State some years ago, and people are still displaced. It's all people are, most of the time you find out that because people can go back and stay with their families, they can be taken in, you don't even know that displacement has happened. If it is elsewhere where we don't have this communal sense of living, that is where it becomes so obvious. So I think we should really look at having that policy, pass it through, and have that will to say that this is how we should run it and save so many people.
What role? We have just a minute or so left now for this before we wrap it up. What role is envisaged for public information management in the draft policy on IDPs? Because you have to communicate with these displaced persons.
Yes. Just like Okeken has also said, the multifaceted nature of the dynamics of IDPs that also attract a multi-sectoral and stakeholders intervention. The Public Awareness Agency has a primary role. We also have what we call a pre-warning period. A pre-warning period is where such an agency could also begin to alert people on time that this might happen, and then begin to alert all agencies, get everything together to do what you expected to do. And then in that process also continue as much as possible to alert the public about the situation. And talking about the legal framework and why we are not doing it, the processes of owning an international legal framework is you sign, you ratify, then you domesticate it in your own system. And this policy is one of the essential ways for Nigeria to say we have owned that Kampala Convention on the IDPs by producing a mechanism and a framework of governance of my IDPs in the country.
All right, Reverend Father Emeka, but I would just like to take one of the
National Assembly under Honorable Sani Zero. They are pushing for a law that will protect IDPs. So it will be easier for IDPs when their rights are violated to seek their rights to be, taken care of through the passage of such laws. So in terms of the policy, there are several rights for the IDP.